Okay, so before we get into doing the review for test 2, I do want to remind you that registration for spring classes opens tomorrow morning. So you can go ahead and register for your classes that you want to take in the spring and the summer, I think, starting tomorrow. And I highly encourage you to register early so you can get the classes and the times that you want. Next semester is going to work like this semester because I'm sure it's all going to be, the same since from COVID and everything. So a lot of classes are going to be offered as the high flex classes, like we're doing, where you pick a day, or online. You can always choose online. The classes that are going to fill up the first are going to be the science classes. So if you need biology, microbiology, AMP1 or AMP2, those all fill up super fast. Okay, so make sure, especially if you want to take it at 9:25 on Tuesday, Thursday, right? Because that's the time everybody wants, or 10 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, everybody likes those mid-morning class time. So if you want that good time schedule, make sure just go ahead and register tomorrow. Even if you think your schedule may change between now and when classes start in the middle of January, you can always rearrange your schedule, right? So go ahead and get your spot. And then if you decide later to rearrange, if you need to rearrange your schedule, just rearrange your schedule. But it doesn't do any harm to go ahead and hold a spot in what you think is going to be the schedule that you're going to want in the spring. Okay, and if you need any help with that, I'd be happy to help you with it. Okay, now let's get into reviewing for test number 2. The first problem talks about whether something is an even or odd function. The picture of it is like this. There's my x-axis and my y-axis. And it has this upside down parabola that's supposed to be the same on both sides. And it asks you if it's even or odd or neither. Okay, let's read to remind ourselves what that means. Even means it's symmetrical with the y-axis. That means it's the same on the right side of the y-axis as it is on the left side of the y-axis. So that's what this one's going to be, right? If I drew a line down this y-axis and folded this on it, one side mirrors exactly what the other side is, right? They're the same, or supposed to be. My drawing is not exact, but if you're looking at your review, it is exact. It is symmetrical with the y-axis. Which means it is even. So the answer to that problem is that is an even function. If it is symmetrical with the origin, then it is an odd function. Okay? An example of something that would look like an odd function. Okay, again, that's even, since it's the same on both sides of the y. Is like the x cubed function. If I rotated, there's several different ways. It's harder to see something that's symmetrical with the origin or an odd function. But if I rotated this 180 degrees, it would lie on top of the other half of it. Or if I turned it upside down, it would look the same on the top and the bottom. So again, one is even and one is odd. If it's not either one of those, then it is neither. Number 2. Now we have a few problems that we're getting into that are going to go through all those transformation rules that we talked about. And remember what the transformation rules told us. Numbers that are inside the parentheses or inside the square root symbol or inside the absolute value symbol told us how the graph was shifting horizontally, left or right. Okay? Inside numbers tell us left or right, but we go opposite the sign. So plus actually shifts me to the left, and minus would shift me to the right. The outside numbers, numbers that are outside of the parentheses or some kind of grouping symbol, shift it vertically up and down, and you go with the sign. So a plus moves you up, a minus moves you down. So let's talk about number 2. The function is g of x equals x plus 1 squared plus 4. So the first thing it's going to ask you is, what is the graph shape that you're going to start with, and what gives it that shape? Okay, your exponent is what is going to give it that shape. So since it's squared, I'm going to start off with the graph of x squared, which means it's going to be a parabola, a U shape. Let's see, what are these going to do? Inside numbers shift you left or right. So since this is plus 1, I'm actually going to shift to the left 1. Outside numbers move you up and down. So since that's plus 4, I'm going to move up 4. So it's going to be an x squared graph, so the U graph, and that point that's going to go left 1 and up 4 is the vertex of that parabola. Okay? So that's what you're going to tell it, and then it's going to ask you to graph it. Okay? So it's actually just going to tell you what shape you're trying to draw. So you're going to go over there and click on that parabola to tell it you want to draw a parabola since it's x squared. And then you'll click with your mouse anywhere on the graph. So even if you click right here, it's going to draw a U right there with the vertex at the origin. So once you place the parabola on there, then this is the problem where it gives you the controls down here to tell you to shift it those 2 directions. So you would horizontally shift it to the left 1 and then vertically shift it up 2, which is going to move your graph for you. So it would shift it left 1 and up 4 to draw it. So you're not actually even going to be plotting points. You're just shifting it using those horizontal and vertical shift controls. All right, number 3 is another transformation problem. F of x equals the square root of x minus 10. With the x minus 10 underneath the square root symbol. So let's see, where is that going to move this shape? First of all, the square root shape is this shape. And this is a multiple choice problem. And all 4, A, B, C, and D, are going to give you graphs that have this shape on them. So as long as you know what that transformation rule is telling you, you're going to be able to pick the right graph. Since this is an inside number, it's going to horizontally shift it opposite of the way the sign is telling me. So since it's minus 10, it's actually going to shift me to the right 10. So again, it is a multiple choice problem. The only one that has been shifted to the right is B, right? Yeah. Number 4 is another transformation problem. g of x equals negative x minus 2 squared plus 5. And it tells you it starts off with the shape x squared, and then it's going to give you 3 blanks and ask you where all the shifting is going to do, and the other blank is going to come from what this is telling it to do. So again, it's starting off with the graph of x squared. Let's see what else is happening. If you're negative out front like this, that is going to flip that parabola upside down. Okay? It's not going to say it like that. It's going to tell me that this right here reflects across the x-axis. That's what makes it go upside down. The inside number shifts it horizontally, so left or right. Since it's minus 2, I'm going to go to the right 2. And then your outside number is plus 5, so you're going to go up 5. Lindsay, I'm going to try to turn. I see that it's so dark. I can't open the shades because it makes it such a glare.
I can see it pretty well.
Is that better, Lindsay? I know it makes these two.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. All right, 5 and 6. If you have the quad program, 5 and 6 are simply going to be plugging into the quad program. I'm going to work it out all the way, just in case, because some people don't have the quad program, which is fine. You're not going to be able to not do the test simply because you don't have the quad program. It'll just make it easier and faster if you do. Okay, number 5 says find the zeros of the following function. A squared plus 12a plus 32. So if I'm going to find this by hand, the first thing I'm going to do is turn my f of a into a 0. That's what's going to find what makes this equal 0. That's what means when you're finding zeros. Then I'm going to see if this trinomial will factor, because factoring is one of the methods to solve these quad problems. So let's see if this trinomial will factor. If it factors, I'm going to need an a and an a here because I have to multiply these two terms together and make it equal a squared. So the only way that that's going to happen is if you have a times a. The second step is I've got to find the numbers that multiply to give me 32. So my options will be 32 times 1, 16 times 2, or 8 times 4. Because that's all the ways to multiply to get 32. If there's a pair that adds to 12, then this is factorable and you can solve it by factoring. That pair right there will add to 12, right? 8 plus 4. So that's the numbers that come in here. Plus 8 plus 4. Still equal to 0. Now, your factors, the last step is to set them each equal to 0 and solve them for a, to get your a by itself. So here I would need to subtract 8 from both sides to get this a by itself. So a equals negative 8. And on this one, I would subtract the 4 from both sides to get a equals negative 4. So negative 8 and negative 4 are the two answers, are the two zeros. If you have the quad program, then you just go to your program button down to quad, hit enter, hit enter again, and then it's going to ask you what your A, B, and C are. Remember, the A is whatever is in front of your squared term. Your B is whatever is in front of this term. And then your C is your constant. So your A, B, and C are 1, 12, and 32. So if you're punching that in, A is 1, B is, let's say, 12, and C is 32. And then hit enter, and there is your -4 and -8. So if you have that quad program, it's just simply punching it in. Definitely a time saver. Number 6. Another find the zeros of the function f of x equals 5x squared minus x plus 8. Again, this saves you a lot of time if you have the quad program. If not, you'll notice that if you did try to factor this, factoring is not an option because it's just not factorable. These are the ones where we did the quad formula. So if you do not have your quad program, these are the steps you're going to have to use to solve this problem. Remember, the formula is the opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So your same numbers are A, B, and C. So let's see, I'm going to need to choose my A, B, and C to plug into the formula. A is the number in front of x squared, so that'll be 5. B is the number in front of x, so since it's just a minus, it's going to be -1. And C is your constant, which is 8. Then you're plugging that into the formula. So the first thing I need is the opposite of my b. So what's the opposite of this b would be +1. Then plus minus the square root. Underneath the square root symbol, you need your b, but square it. So since my b is -1, if I square that, I get +1. Then -4a and c. My a and c are 5 and 8. And then your denominator is 2 times a, which is 2 times my a is 5. So after you plug in, the next step is to figure out what all of this is underneath your square root. So just type that into your calculator, exactly like it's written right here. So I'm just going to bring down the 1. Plus minus, then I'm going to have a square root. Now, underneath my square root, I'm just going to exactly type in what that shows. So I have 1 minus 4, and then open parentheses, 5, close parentheses, open parentheses, 8. Close parentheses. So again, you are typing in your calculator exactly what is underneath that square root symbol. Hit enter. So that's all going to turn into -159. Over your denominator, which is 2 times 5, gives me 10. So what happens on this problem is I do have a square root that has a negative underneath. So you can't leave your answer with a negative because that is Not mathematically correct. You need to bring out what letter comes out of here to turn this positive. That's when your imaginary number comes in. 1 plus minus, pull out the I, square root of 159 over 10. Okay, and that is two answers showing that plus and minus is what the two different answers are. 1 plus I square root of 159 over 10 and 1 minus I square root of 159 over 10. But when you're looking, you know, down at the bottom, when you're typing in your answers where it has that fraction button and the exponent button, there will be a little plus minus button down there that you can use to type in both of those answers. Once again, not a deal breaker. You're not going to not be able to do the test if you don't have the quad program. But if I do have it, what am I doing? I'm just going to program down to quad. Type it in my A, B, and C, which in this case are 5, -1, and 8. 5, -1, 8. Hitting enter. And there's your two answers. 1 plus I square root of 159 over 10 and 1 minus I square root of 159 over 10. All right, number 7. Gives me the picture of this parabola. It tells me the equation of the function is x squared minus 4x minus 5. And then it gives me the picture of this graph. And then it asks me two things, okay? And again, if you look, it shows you very clearly these 2 points at -1 and 5. When it asks you what the x-intercepts are, it actually tells you. So don't forget to type an ordered pair, right? Because x-intercepts are those 2 points. The ordered pair right? You have 2 x-intercepts. The y-coordinates of your ordered pairs are both 0. Those are what your y-coordinate always is at the x-intercept. Then where it crosses through, which in this case is -1, and in that one it's 5, are the x-coordinates of those 2 points. So you have 2 completely separate points, because you have 2 completely separate points. One at -1, 0, and one at 5, 0. They're both ordered pairs. Then it asks you for, how did it ask you? It wants to know what these solutions are. The solutions are not points. They are just whatever the x-coordinates were of those x-intercepts. So your solutions are -1 and 5, not in parentheses. It is not a point. That is not a ordered pair. So the ordered pair x-intercepts are in parentheses for the ordered pairs. The solutions are not. okay? All right, number 8 and 9 were in that section where we had word problems that went with our quad section, that we're dealing with those right triangles. Like number 8 is talking about a wire that is stretched from the ground to the top of an antenna tower. So here's a wire stretched from the ground to the top of an antenna tower. So the shape of that would make a right triangle, and then this problem just assumed that you knew that when you're dealing with right triangles, you would know the Pythagorean Theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So let's see what information it gives me. It tells me that the wire is 35 feet long. So I know this distance of that side. Then it tells me the height of the tower is 7 feet greater than the distance from the tower's base to the end of the wire. So the height, here's my tower. So this height is 7 feet more than this distance right here, the distance from the base of the antenna tower to the base of the wire. So what I don't know is what either one of those are. I just know that this side is 7 feet more than this side, which means I can call this side X, and then this side would be 7 feet more than X, which is X plus 7. And then it wants to know what those two distances are. So now we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve this. So let's see, I need to know this side squared plus this side squared is going to be equal to 35 squared. So let's write out what that would look like. This side squared, so X plus 7 squared, plus this side squared, so it'll just be the X squared, equals the long side, or the hypotenuse is what it's called, this side, which is 35 squared. So let's work this out. First of all, I need to see X plus 7 squared. Well, if I'm squaring that, X plus 7 times itself, I'm going to do it over here, because look what that means. I'm going to have to FOIL that, right? If I'm doing X plus 7 times itself. So let's see what happens when I FOIL this. My first, X times X gives me X squared. My outer, X times 7 gives me plus 7X. My inner, 7 times X gives me another plus 7X. And then my last, 7 times 7 gives me plus 49. Then if I put these two terms, since they're like terms in the middle, I'll have 14x in here. So now I've got x squared plus 7 and 7 gives me 14x plus 49. That's what I'm going to write when I got x plus 7 squared. This is what it gave me. So x squared plus 14x plus 49. And from the x plus 7 squared, now I've got to drop down this plus x squared equals 35 squared, which you can just punch in your calculator, 35 times 35, which gives me 1225. So now, I notice that it's an x squared problem, which means if I can get this set up right, I can use my quad program to solve it. What does getting it set up right mean I need to do? That means I need to have all my terms together on one side set equal to 0 so that I can have numbers for A, B, and C all together on one side. So before I move this 1225 over here, I do notice on the left that I have an x squared and another x squared. So since they're on the same side of that equal symbol, that means they need to go together, right? So I actually have 2x squareds over there. So rewrite this as 2x squareds. And then just drop down to plus 14x plus 49, still equal to 1225. Now I'm going to subtract that 1225 so that I can put this term over here, because before you can do A, B, and C in your quad program, all the terms have to be together. So I'm going to subtract 1225. To see what I got. On the right, I got 0. On the left, I have 2x squared plus 14x, and then I'll do the 49 minus 1225. Which gives me negative 1176. So all three terms are on the left, zeros on the right, which means now I can go to my quad program and type in A, B, and C. So again, just go to program down to quad. Hit enter. My A, which is the number in front of x squared, is 2. My B, which is the number in front of x, which is 14. And my C, which is the constant, which is negative 1176. Now, when I hit enter, look what it gives me. 21 and negative 28 are the solutions. I knew I was going to get 2 solutions because it's a quad problem, right? When you're solving for x squared, you get 2 answers. So I have to decide. Remember, I'm trying to solve for x. Which one of these do I need to use? Only one of them makes sense. So the way I'm going to figure out which one makes sense is to realize, what is x representing? It's representing a distance from the base of an antenna tower to the end of the wire. Well, if I'm talking about a distance from this point to this point, I'm not going to be a negative number, am I? A negative, you can't say from here to here is negative 28. Right? It's a distance. It's not going to be a negative number. So that's why you use the positive 21 to represent your x. So now I also know the height of the antenna tower, because if I know what x is, I just need to add 7 to it to get the 28. So the distance from the wire to the tower, which is x, is 21. And then the height of the tower would be 28. All right, number 9 is another Pythagorean Theorem problem, because when I draw out the diagram of what the words are telling me, it ends up making another right triangle kind of problem. All right, number 9 says the foot of an extension ladder is 9 feet from a wall. So let's see what this is going to look like. There's my ladder, lean it up against the wall. The foot of the ladder, which is the bottom of it, is 9 feet from the wall. So I know that this side is 9 feet. the height that the ladder reaches on the wall. So here's my wall. So the height that the ladder reaches on the wall and the length of the ladder, so there's the length of the ladder, are consecutive integers, which means one comes right after the other. So I don't know what either side of these are, but I do know whatever this wall is, this one's going to be one, the length of the ladder is one more than that. Which means I can call this x. So if I need to add 1 to it, that side will be x plus 1. So now I'm going to set this up as my Pythagorean theorem. Now remember, this side, it doesn't matter, either one of these can be the a or the b in this formula. But this side has to be your c squared. The ladder side, the hypotenuse, is what is on the other side of the equal symbol. So let's see. This side squared, which will be x squared, plus this side squared. So 9 squared equals the diagonal side squared, which is x plus 1 squared. So there's what it is set up. Let's start working this. X squared plus 9 squared is 81. Now, just like I did on that last one, when I had to square the x plus 7, I went over to the side because I knew I was going to have to FOIL that. That's what I'm going to do now. I need to figure out what x plus 1 squared is. Which means x plus 1 times itself. So I'm going to FOIL this. My first, x times x gives me x squared. My outer, x times 1 gives me 1x. My inner, 1 times x gives me another 1x. And then my last, 1 times 1 gives me positive 1. So when I put my x's together, 1x and 1x gives me 2 x's. So I still have x squared plus 2x plus 1. From the x plus 1 squared. That gave me x squared plus 2x plus 1. So it's starting to look like it's going to be another quad problem that I can take to my quad program. But during the solving of this, because the first step that I need to take now is to get everything on one side, maybe, because the first thing I'm going to try to put together are these x squared. So I need to subtract this x squared so I can put it over here. So here's my equal sign. So it canceled it on the right, but look what happened on the left. When I subtracted x squared from this side, it canceled my x squared there too, which means now it's not a quad program anymore because there's no x squareds. Let's see what we do have left. The only thing I have left over here is the 81. The only thing I have left over here is 2x plus 1. And what am I trying to find? I'm trying to find out what x is. So all I need to do is get that x by itself. It's just not part of a quad anymore because it's not squared. So I'm just isolating that x, which means I need to subtract 1. So now I have 2x equals 80 and divide by 2. So what does x equal? X equals, over here I have 80 divided by 2, which is 40. So my x is 40, which means what is x plus 1? Well, I would just add 1 to that 40 and get 41. Now, be careful. There's only one blank on this problem. If you'll notice, the only blank just says, right here where my finger is, the length of the ladder is blank feet. It doesn't want to know this number. It wants to know only how long is the ladder, which is 41 feet. Okay, we're going to get through number 12 today. So that was 9. Let's go to 10. Gives me the picture of a parabola. So it shows me this picture of a parabola, and it says the vertex is blank. Right below this picture of this parabola, it tells me, it gives me those coordinates of that point. So it's at 3, 0. It literally tells you what the vertex is. The vertex is 3, 0. What it's wanting to do is show you the information that you can get from knowing the vertex of a parabola. You'll be able to find out what its axis of symmetry is. The axis of symmetry of a parabola is the vertical line that goes straight through that vertex right there and cuts it in half and makes it symmetrical. That's its line of symmetry, that's axis of symmetry. And it even tells you when you're typing this in, type an equation, because it's actually an equation of this vertical line. The equation is always x equals, and then just whatever the x coordinate of that vertex is, which is 3. So that would just be x equals 3. And then it's going to ask you what is the maximum or minimum value of this parabola. This one has a minimum, right? Your parabola has a maximum if it's upside down and has a top to it. Okay, this one is regular U-shape, so it's got a bottom, which is its minimum. And the minimum or maximum value is just whatever that y coordinate of your vertex is. So it's just 0. The minimum is 0. It's not an equation, it's just a 0. Oh, actually, we just get to number 11. All right, last one we're going to do today. And then we'll finish it up on Wednesday. F of x equals 2x squared plus 6x plus 2. It wants me to find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, the minimum or maximum value, and then it's going to want me to graph it. Now, remember, I can find, if I know what this looks like on a graph, I can find its vertex in my calculator. So let's go to y equals, oh, mine's already in there. Put that in your y equals 2x squared plus 6x plus 2. And then graph it. So there's what the graph is going to look like. It's going to be a regular parabola, so it's going to have a minimum value. the vertex is going to be at the minimum. So the way I can find it is to hit your second button, count, and then your minimum or maximum button, just depending on if your vertex is at the minimum or the maximum. This particular one's at the minimum. So I said, go hit your second button. And then come up here and hit calc. It's actually your trace button, but the blue is calc. So you'll notice if I go down to minimum and hit enter. So what it's trying to do is find the minimum of this parabola. So it wants your X to be, or your cursor to be on the left side. So just make sure that when you move your cursor, it's over here on the left side, and hit enter. Once you hit enter, it's going to tell you down here, my instructions now say right bound, which means is your cursor on the right? Since it's not, it's on the left, we just put it there. You're going to need to move your right arrow and get it across the vertex anywhere over here on the right side, and hit enter again. Hit it twice. So there is your vertex, negative 1.5, negative 2.5. Here's the thing. In a minute, when I'm graphing, I'm going to need to know those decimals. Because when I move my cursor around this graph, it's not going to move it around in fractions. It's going to move it around in decimals. However, when you are typing the answer in, when it asks you what the vertex is, it wants to know what each one of those things are, these decimals are, as fractions, which is, we just type it into your calculator. So get back just to the plain screen. Type in negative 1.5 and hit enter. So remember, if you want to turn your decimal into a fraction, just hit the math button. And do you see what number 1 is? That means turn my answer into a fraction, and hit enter twice. So that's going to be negative 3 over 2. And then do the same thing with the negative 2.5. So negative 2.5, math, enter, which gives you negative 5 over 2. So that's what it's going to want you to type your vertex in as. Also, when it asks you for the axis of symmetry, it's going to want the fraction. So the axis of symmetry, remember, that's always x equals whatever your x coordinate of your vertex is. So negative 3 halves is your axis of symmetry. And then it says, does the parabola have a maximum or minimum value? Remember, we graphed it. And it was a regular parabola, right? It wasn't upside down, which means it's going to have a minimum. And what is its minimum value? Whatever the y coordinate of the vertex is as a fraction. So negative 5 halves is its minimum value. Then it's going to say graph it. So when you go to graph it, and here's why this is important that you actually knew the decimal in the first place, is that when I start moving my mouse around, it's not going to change the ordered pairs in fractions. It's going to do it in decimals, right? Your ordered pair, wherever your cursor is, it shows it up in the top right corner, where you're going to move it to negative 1.5 and then negative 2.5. So there's where your vertex is, which is going to be where the first point that you're going to have to plot. Then it's going to ask you to plot a another point. Your other point can be any point on the parabola, not just the vertex. So go back to your y equals. There's your graph with the vertex at negative 1.5, negative 2.5. But now I need another point on this graph. So remember, to get all the points on the graph, just hit second table and pick out any point you want to plot. So there's another point, it looks like at 0, 2. If I show that point. So 0, 2 would be here. And once you draw that second point, it'll draw that parabola for you. Okay? All right. So don't forget, you can register tomorrow morning. We're going to wrap this up starting with number 12 on Wednesday. I have bumped the time up for this review and this test to be 90 minutes because I feel like it's going to take you a little longer than that first one. If you are struggling with the time, remember, you don't have to work the test in order, right? Especially if you have the quad program. Remember, your review and the test, the problems are in the same order. So you know that on the test, since on the review, numbers 5 and 6 were find the zeros, go through and mark the ones that don't take you very much time and go through and do those first. Okay, and then work the ones, you know, you can save the ones that take you more time till the end, right? If you, at the top of your test or your review, if you hit that down arrow where it's telling you what problem you're on, if you hit the down arrow next to that, it'll show you all the problems that you've worked and that you haven't worked. And if you try to submit without working a problem, it'll tell you when you try to submit, say you haven't worked number 12 or something like that. Okay, so you don't have to work them in order. All right, I will see y'all Wednesday.